Hello everyone, welcome to Klarna Smoooth Sessions. We're very pleased and happy you could join us in these challenging and uncertain times. And obviously now during Q4, maybe what is the busiest time in the retail calendar, and in an unprecedented way due to the shift from offline to online that we're seeing. So we are super proud to be working with a lot of you who have tuned in today, and we look forward from Klarna's side to work with a lot of you going forward in 2021 as well. As you know, our partnerships with merchants is really at the core. Now I'm going to go off script as I always do, but I think that there's been a lot of companies, they charge merchants out of a lot of money to incentivize consumers using them. While what we're trying to do here at Klarna is actually build a product that benefits both the merchant and the consumer, which obviously makes it slightly more challenging, but so much more rewarding. And so our partnership with you guys is at the very, very core of what we're trying to do. And we have had a very exciting year this year, taking even things like Corona aside for a second. Our US expansion has been going really, really well. We have gone live with and established new partnerships with people like Macy's, Etsy, Foot Locker, Ralph Lauren, to mention a few. So Sephora, another one. So really, really exciting times for us, and really great to be able to see that we are more and more becoming a truly global company, which is super exciting for myself. For the people who don't know me, I'm the CEO and co-founder. I was part of starting this company 15 years ago. And what's good about it, I was only 23 years then, so I still have a couple of decades left in my career to continue this amazing journey that we're on. So that's really super exciting for me. Among other things that has happened here this year is that we have launched a lot of new markets this year. So we're now in 17 countries. We've launched Australia this year, Belgium, Spain, and Italy. Super excited about that. And actually also, one other thing I just make and point out here, which is kind of counterintuitive, our in-store offering has grown over 75% this year compared to last year, in spite of all the stores being locked down. So it's really exciting to start seeing that our offering starts working in store as well. And our app is doing extremely well. And I'll tell you something that we were very proud of is that for a few hours 2 weeks ago, we were more downloaded than Amazon as the #1 top downloaded shopping app on the iPhone store in the US. Now, it only lasted for a few hours, but we were super, super happy about it. I'm very proud to be able to accomplish that for a very short period of time. So it's been a very obviously interesting year. And then, we can talk hours about how COVID and what that's meant, and both from e-commerce and retail. And that's part of what our session is going to be about today. And obviously also what does it mean for us working in the industry and what has changed in our everyday lives. So with that said, I think I've summed up what I was asked to share with you in this introduction, and hopefully I've done that. And then I want to, with a warm hand over to somebody who's going to manage this conversation much better than I would ever do, which is Alexandra. Over to you.
Thanks very much, Sebastian. And thank you, Klarna, for getting us all together virtually, sadly, not all together in a room, but that's the world we live in at the moment. In what has been a very challenging year, I think everyone will agree, 2020, and as we're coming towards the end of it, it doesn't seem to be getting that much simpler. But as we all know, problems create opportunities, make people think differently. And I think it's really great to have a panel as kind of diverse, actually, as you guys. You're all at the moment in different places, and you all have very different experiences of the retail environment. So I hope we can do a bit of exchanging ideas and brainstorming. For me, I left editing British Vogue in 3 years ago, whatever year that was, 2017. And so much has changed since then. And it's really interesting for me to have left being part of the media solely and to be working more with consultancies and advisories and also journalism, and kind of looking at the whole retail world in really quite a different way to the way that I had a lifetime really of looking at it. And sort of nothing could be more interesting than doing that in the times we live in. And I think it would be very nice to look at some of the big issues of the day, and also to hear from you what you see as possibly some of your unique perceptions and initiatives that you would like to see happening or are already involved with. I'm going to do a little bit of an introduction. Sebastian, we've just met you, but I think very modestly, obviously you didn't say that you've received multiple awards for leadership as an entrepreneur. And I think that's particularly interesting in these times where everyone is really looking for guidance on leadership, and what leadership has possibly changed. And that might be something to discuss a bit. Tan France needs very little introduction. I'm told here that you describe yourself as one of the very first openly gay South Asian men on a major show. But I think actually more than that, you are a designer, you're a commentator, you've been working with Klarna, and of course we know you from your great television shows, and love the one I watched you on with Alexa recently.
Thank you so much.
Peter, you're in, well, I should say that Tan is in Salt Lake City. Peter Quinlan, you're the Executive Vice President of Ticketmaster. And it must have been a really complicated year or end of year for you to be looking at selling tickets to events and the whole huge business that you have been involved with for a long time now. And you're in Barcelona, I think is right, yes?
Right. Indeed.
So you're coming from another totally different perspective to Tan. And Christopher Raeburn, well, I knew Christopher from my Vogue days, and he was one of the leaders, I think, in kind of sustainable fashion with your brand, and done, yeah, I think, forefront of so much of what is now becoming part of the core of what brands want to build in. And you are now the creative director of Timberland, am I right?
That is correct, yeah.
Global creative director.
Yeah, and I'm in London.
You're in London with me,
as well,
in locked down London.
Yeah, that's it. All good fun.
Okay, so let's spin on into the business here, and hope we provide some answers to some of the questions that people have been asking. So I wanted to start by asking how you think the current changes in consumer behavior due specifically to COVID will influence the role of the buyer in the future. I think there are lots of issues about how the consumer behavior is changing, but it would be quite nice to actually have a look at what COVID's doing. And I wonder, Christopher, whether you could start with that. And please, everyone, jump in whenever you want.
Yeah, I'd love to. I mean, just to explain a little bit more about RÆBURN as a whole, and thank you so much for the introduction. Our whole focus as a business is around responsible design. So we do a lot of remaking, recycling, and really focusing on sort of waste reduction with everything we do. We've been going about 11 years now. And the other facet to the work that we do within RÆBURN is very much about sort of craft, creativity, and community coming together. And just before COVID, we launched pretty successfully back end of last year our central London store for RÆBURN, so just off Carnaby Street, and things were going, of course, really well. We're looking forward to the year ahead, and then, of course, COVID hit in spring. So very quickly, we experienced, of course, a massive drop in footfall in central London. Of course, the same for most cities. And at the same time, we made a decision actually to close that central London store and then to consolidate with our studio space, which also acts for retail and community aspects, as I mentioned earlier, here in East London. So as a sort of microcosm of maybe what's happened a lot within the industry, I think it's quite a good barometer, because we saw all of a sudden our potential sort of bigger opportunity with the central London store be kind of really very quickly taken down. But then actually what's been so encouraging, again, before the second lockdown, was that we've really found that customers locally all of a sudden are discovering us, and 50 to 70% of people walking through the door in our atelier space where we physically make things are saying, oh wow, I've lived here 10 years, 15 years, and I knew nothing about you. And so it's really changed the dynamic, and it's been, for us, kind of very encouraging. And then, of course, in the same time, we've been using the last now sort of 7 months or so to completely transform our online business. So of course, new website, new web shop, all of those things you would expect. But it's interesting just the crossover between physical and digital. And I think hopefully, yeah, we're a sort of little microcosm, as I say, of what's happening out there.
Sebastian, what have you found that COVID how has it affected in a sort of very broad way, Klarna?
Wow, there's been so many things, but I think I would start with one thing though, right? And that's like when it all started and people started talking about, potential implications, I was quite skeptic. And I'll tell you why. It's because so many times I can stand and talk to people and say at Klarna, like, we should be doing this and whatever. And people like nicely nodding and like, okay. And then everything continues the same way as it used to before. I think we as human beings, we don't learn from hearing things or seeing things. We learn from experiences, and only experiences really impact our behavior. And I think that's really the big learning that I had here, is that this has profoundly been, and again, I want to say this with the utmost care and respect, obviously, for the people that have been somehow either, themselves or lost somebody close and so forth. But if you take those aside and look at for the rest of us that hasn't been like directly impacted by the disease, it's just a very life-changing moment in so many ways. People have had a very different life experience. They have changed their priorities, their spending habits in many multiple ways. And these experiences are changing people's behaviors, and that will have a profound impact. And obviously, as has been reported already and highlighted by many, a massive acceleration of digitalization, obviously. So people shifting and using e-commerce at a very, at a much higher frequency and to a much higher degree than before, and they're not going to come back. We see, I think, highlighting within that, because that's more a general trend, but highlighting within that, for example, we've seen that the biggest increase in online shopping has been in what I would refer to as slightly older people. Not old people, but slightly older, meaning like above 50. So in kind of that bracket, because they have even more than the young people who are already shopping online, but now they really accelerated their adoption of these solutions. So that's, for example, one interesting observation. I think another massive impact on the whole retail industry is I've talked to a number of retailers, and where I've asked them, when your stores reopen, what is the share of sales that's going to be online versus offline? What do you expect to see now as stores come back online? And they tell me, you know what, it's actually going to be 50-50. And I'm thinking like, wow, 20 years ago when I was part of starting payments for e-commerce was this tiny thing that was deprioritized far down into those retailers' agenda. And now it's actually becoming the business. It's becoming the big part of business, and the stores are becoming the second priority. That's just going to massively shift. Like, think about all these retailers, like whose job is important and not, and what have you focused on? And so like, it just changes everything when suddenly this is the primary channel, and then the rest is kind of the supporting channel, right? So I think those things have just been just so interesting. And then I maybe say one third thing that I have reflected a lot on, that I don't think has been spoken about so much, is that in a way, coming back also to what was mentioned about sustainability and so forth, everyone has been put on a savings program. Like, people don't recognize that. Like, there's obviously 5, 10, 15% of the people out there who have either, their businesses are going down, or they have had negative impact on their jobs and so forth. And that's obviously a different group. But if you take the rest of us, the 85% or whatever, that have kept their jobs and things are still kind of the same, they have not been spending money for 6 months. They have not traveled. They have not gone to restaurants. They have not done all of these things. And people's balance sheets are very different than they were before. People have saved so much money, and some of that spending has shifted into online, but not close to what they used to spend offline. And so most people have more savings, less debt, and are spending less per month now than they did before. And my big question is, like, are people really going to go back? Like, to what degree are we going to go back? And how are that making people feel about their economy and their spending, and what am I spending money on, and what value am I getting? And was it making me happier that I was making all these purchases? To what degree? And was it necessary? I think that's really interesting. I don't know if it's going to profoundly impact people, but I'm very, very curious to see what the effect of that will be. And also, like, what am I actually spending money on? And final, just to round this off, one really interesting observation. When I talk to the big fashion retailers, one thing that has dramatically dropped after COVID is return rates. Return rates have gone dramatically low. This is why you're seeing the profitability of our listed fashion companies go up so much, is because returns are down dramatically. And so what is that? Why? Maybe to some degree, I'm not buying party dresses. I'm buying clothes that I actually use in my daily life in a different way. I'm not going to as many parties. Might obviously be part of the explanation, but I'm also thinking about it. Is it a more thoughtful spending? Am I thinking through a little bit more what I'm buying and how I'm buying and what I'm buying? I don't know. Like, there's something interesting going on there. So I think it's just been, sorry, now I covered a lot of these things, but there's just a lot of really interesting aspects of this kind of, it's like imagine somebody would suggest this before, like, hey, let's take the whole world and lock it down for 9 months and see what happens. Like, like those things never happen. That's actually happened. And you're like, how is it going to impact the world? It's just fascinating. It's fascinating.
And Peter, what have you seen in your business? Because that must have been hugely affected by this specific issue.
Yeah, it's been massive, and Sebastian, you touch on a lot of points here that we see physically. I think one of the first things that we had to do immediately was pivot on what was our ordinary business as usual, selling tickets, to a totally different business operation that was about preparing for mass refunds. And we went and we built this big voucher project as well. So we totally pivoted on all of our roadmap and what we were progressing to the year. And I think one of the first kind of data points that we were extraordinarily happy about was that 86% of fans were holding on to their tickets, and we're excited for going to that show on the other side of this. And I think that was the first data point that really us as a business made us feel incredibly happy about where the consumer sentiments were at the time. And I think since that we've talked to fans regularly, and the latest results show that a 90% confidence rate on fans to return to live on the far side of this still exists and is still there. So all of those elements are really positive for us. I think the one thing that we see as well is that it's all about an acceleration to digital, and Sebastian, you touched on that point as well. What we have now seen, even on some of the events that we've continued to start to sell for again, is that we're actually processing 100% digital tickets on some events, which is an extraordinary shift to where we were before. And even where events were, the last events that you guys were at, if you can imagine an event that has 0 paper tickets, it's incredible. And that goes all the way through to after COVID is over, what people expect from both the online experience that they have with us, straight through to the actual events, and how digital experiences within that event, from how you pay to how you're interacting, for making purchases at the event, how they're all part of the same ecosystem. I think those things are certainly changing, and changing quickly.
I wonder whether with live events particularly, we've been deprived of them. And I think when you're deprived of something, you really realize what you appreciate, and that there won't be quite a big kind of bounce back for people just longing to go to live concerts, theatre. I mean, I know I am, you know, I just can't wait to get out there and hear a musician perform and hear the applause and everything physically there. So I would think that that might be quite a good good for your business, and indeed for the live events business when it gets back. And Tan, I wonder what you think about that.
Yeah, as far as live gigs go, desperate to get back, and I feel like most people are feeling the same way. But as far as retail goes and e-commerce goes, I agree with you, Sebastian, that it's a great thing that there's a 50-50 split at this point with the retail versus e-commerce. However, I've got a feeling that retail might spike back up just a little after COVID hits. After COVID it goes away. I think that people are so desperate to get back out. So as Alexandra was saying about going to concerts, she's longing for it. I think almost everyone in my life who ordinarily appreciates the experience of going to a mall with friends, shopping with friends, they haven't been able to do those things that bring them so much joy. I think that we are going to see people shopping again in real life. Do I think that that's long term and sustainable? No, but for the short term, I think that people are just looking for real world experiences again, even if they're
right. I think you're right. I mean, I think I totally agree with you, because but to your point, like the shopping that is an experience, that's what we're longing for.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember I don't want to like bog down on somebody who's dead, but the point is like Toys R Us went bust and everyone's like, oh, it's e-commerce taking over. I went into Toys R Us store. It was a horrible experience. It was like these toys trashed all over the place, and there was no fun to it. There was no inspiration. It was just like cheap, whatever. Like, I'm not surprised it went bust, but it wasn't because of the physical e-commerce. It was poorly executed as an experience, right? And what you're talking about is brands that have the ability to use physical stores as a way to create some kind of unique and fun experience. I'm totally with you, and that has a big future.
Yeah, and as far as e-commerce goes, I'm not surprised at all that people are shopping more and more online. I truly believe that was always going to happen. It's just that COVID accelerated it. I think that this has just been pushed 10 years ahead because of COVID. Ordinarily, I think that we would have graduated to a point where there isn't a need to always go out to shop if we want to shop. And as far as return rates go, I'm a former retailer. Return rates are always high when you're offering product online. However, I've got a feeling that a lot more people are keeping their products for a couple of reasons. I can't imagine that even if there's something's not quite right, I'm speaking from my own experiences, that I want to go out and take that thing back to the post office or UPS or wherever. But I think people are making much more conscious decisions as to what they're purchasing. I think that the shopper now, whether they're 20 or 70, is a lot more aware of where they're spending their money. Do I think they're slowing down on spending? I don't. I think that they are spending probably almost as much as they ordinarily would. They're just not spending it on the kind of things that were a little more of a luxury up until this point. I think that a lot of us on this call, probably all of us on this call, aren't living the lives of many out there who have to really budget on what they're spending on. I think that they're just pivoting to what's making them comfortable in their own spaces to make this experience of being at home so often a little more bearable. So I don't know if they're changing their spending as far as how much they're spending. It's more of where they're spending.
I was wondering whether, in terms of sustainability, I mean, what's happened with COVID? Everybody was on a really great path to making their businesses more sustainable, more ecological, best practices coming in that were requiring investment in order to manage that. And many of these businesses will have been suffering a bit, obviously, through what's happened. And I was wondering about whether you felt that was actually going to slow down the path of progress because of that people might have to take a step back from moves that they had intended to do because they don't have the budget, they can't hire the people, they can't make the changes. What do you think about that, Christopher?
Yeah, categorically, my biggest fear coming out of COVID is the environmental and inventory crisis that we're going to be facing, because unfortunately, thousands of retailers out there have now all of this excess stock, and yes, we're selling more online, but there is still a lot more out there. And then particularly as we head into Black Friday and all of these sort of slash and burn techniques, then piled on top of that is actually just the amount of single-use plastic that we've all of a sudden started using more and more of as people. You put all of that together and it's pretty scary, to be honest. And I think, at the same time where a lot of brands have publicly stated their goals, long-term around carbon neutrality, for example, and environmental improvements, absolutely, COVID's come at completely the wrong time to help with that. But the challenge brings the opportunity. And I think we had that rare moment at the within the first sort of lockdown of time and an opportunity to truly think, and that forced stop, that then actually really made people think. And I also think it made the consumer really wake up, to really think about what their obligation was in all of this. And I took a lot of sort of reassurance that even back in May, the Google searches for how to live a more sustainable life, this is people around the world looking for that, was up 4,550% back in May. So for the first time, at least we've got the push and pull. We've got customers actually, aware of the impacts. And all of a sudden, when we were locked down and continue to be locked down, we're surrounded by all this stuff in our homes, right? And then you're really thinking, well, do you need another jacket? Do you need another, So we're first aware, and then importantly, the brands are in a position to I would say, be providing better products. But the next 2 to 3 years, make no mistake, is going to be incredibly challenging. But I do think at least we've now got the push and pull there of customers, and particularly younger customers, asking for the product, brands being in a position actually to provide the product. But what happens next, I think, is still going to be very hard.
Can I make a really quick comment about sustainability? I don't often have business ideas anymore. Quite honestly, I have no dream of getting back into business. However, I fantasized over the last few months if I were a much smarter person and I knew how to execute this. I have thought about sustainability quite a bit over the last few months, thinking we've talked about it for the last few years, and it's an interesting thing. In America, we don't talk about it anywhere near as much as the UK. Literally every time I do a press interview in the UK, they ask me about sustainability. I don't know why it's more at the forefront of your thinking than it is ours. However, I thought there's got to be an opportunity for somebody who is capable of doing this to take all of this dead stock. There's so much stock right now that isn't being purchased that companies are desperately trying to offload, and they probably can't. I wish there was somebody smart enough to be able to find a way to facilitate taking that product from them and finding a way to provide it to these companies who are wanting to push for upcycling and sustainability. It feels like there's a solution there if somebody can come up with an answer.
It's a massive opportunity, Tan, but with it also there's a reskilling exercise that needs to come alongside that. Yeah. So I think in order to repurpose or to deconstruct and remake something, it tends to be quite labor intensive. But absolutely, these are the sorts of things that we need to be working towards. As an example, could the UK be the future of recycling garments? Yeah. And then actually what we need to do a lot more of is thinking not just on a garment level, but on a fiber level. So your business plan needs to go upstream and then think, okay, there's billions of garments out there, but what are they made from? And unfortunately, at the moment, we're still making lots of garments from mixes of materials, so generally polyester and cotton blended together, and you can't extrude them at the moment at scale. So there needs to be a massive load of work that, on the one hand, there's a clear and immediate business opportunity, and I think now that a few thousand people out there know about it, you might want to get working on it quite quickly. But then it's the bigger opportunity upstream. But yeah, it's there, and we all need to work on this together. That's the truth of it, because the answer isn't just making more stuff. The answer is absolutely looking at what's already out there and how we can be making it better to begin with, and then thinking what happens at the end of life afterwards. So,
couldn't agree.
Yeah.
And Sebastian, in terms of Klarna, how are you operating within this whole area? It must be something that constantly comes up as a conversation in your business.
Yeah, it does. I was just thinking also, just quickly to comment on that previous conversation, is that one of the things that I'm hearing from a lot of the retailers that we speak to is, first and foremost, I just want to highlight that the surplus of stock is true for retailers, but for the online players that are pure online, it's the opposite. China has been locked down. Production hasn't been fully there, and they were also underestimating the surge in online demand. So they kind of talking to me about the exact opposite problem, which is that, and you may have even seen Amazon announce something similar, that they're feeling it will be problematic to actually make sure that they have enough product to sell. I'm also hearing that some of the online retailers are struggling to get the brands to give them enough access to enough of their products. So I'm kind of hearing a mixed feedback here from retailers in regards to this question. I think secondly, though, on the topic also importantly, is that another thing that I'm hearing from a lot of people is I'm talking to CEOs of retailers, and it's an energized bunch of people. So what I mean with that is that we've had these organizations, some of them very large, where people have been kind of ongoing, doing a lot of things, and it's been kind of business as usual. And comes digitalization, and we need to fix e-commerce, and we've had our business plans and so forth. And then comes this crisis point, right? And everyone needs to throw everything out the window. And as Peter was describing, for example, for Ticketmaster and stuff like that, and just reset and deadly focus on some specific things they want to get done. And I hear from everyone coming back and saying, wow, how much we could get done, how much we could accomplish in such a short period of time when we really focus on this, when we were working on this. It's re-energized a lot of these organizations in a way that's quite impressive to see when they kind of refocused on the times. And I get a sense from a lot of these people that there's a lot of re-energized organizations right now that feel quite empowered by when they kind of work so solely and dedicatedly on these things. So I think that coming back to the sustainability topic, I feel that people will now say, look, what if we stop treating this as kind of something that we do among all of the other things, and what if we would give this that kind of focus, really address it with the same type of mentality that we've done in this? What could we accomplish then? How quickly could we change? I think I'm hoping at least to see some of that going on, and I think that would be it. And I think for Klarna as well, I mean, we have obviously had our eye on this a long period of time. Personally, I'm a business angel investor in Depop. I'm a big fan of what they're doing, and I think that and we've been trying to kind of understand what should we do, what makes sense for Klarna to do, and so forth. And I think that it probably, the more we've been working on it, we see an opportunity due to the fact that we are the biggest payments provider in the world that actually has SKU level data on every transaction, right? So we do not only know that you bought for $100, we know exactly what item you bought, what size you bought, et cetera, right? So we're trying to think about, if we really want to do something that isn't just whitewashing and it's just like some nice announcement, whatever, because it sounds good, how could we put that to use in order to potentially, track and understand or match better, or whatever we could do that actually kind of utilizes that in an impactful way that can drive, that can have a meaningful impact from a sustainability perspective. So that's where we've been spending most of our time, really thinking about something that we feel we have a strategic advantage, or some kind of specific, differentiation that gives us an ability to create something that's really impactful for people, rather than just like announcing that we're nice, so we're doing this or whatever. Which I often feel that some companies get a little bit stuck in, that it's like, we need this social responsibility thing over here. Let's do something. Let's announce something. Nice, we did something, right? Like, yeah, but what do you want to do that's really going to have an impact?
We all know that the digital retail is the future, a partnership with bricks and mortar and the online space. But one of the things that strikes me is how unexciting the digital retail space is. And online shopping is very templated, and it doesn't have any kind of personality, or very little personality. And I'd love to hear any ideas that you might have about what you might be doing or think could be done to make it feel more like going into a shop used to, that you had a kind of emotional attachment to it. And I was thinking, Peter, do you have any thoughts about that?
I'd say Tan is the man for this question, but like from our perspective, right? Ticketmaster, our goal is to sell our clients tickets as quickly as possible. So I think our mission is always around creating products that help both the fan discover what events are happening, and then when they have discovered what events are happening, to try and get that ticket sold to them in as fast and effective way as possible. So I think around like creative ideas that go within that, there's certainly the discovery element, and we certainly, we've been building a distributed commerce business for a long time, and distributed commerce is basically powering the ability to sell our tickets outside of the Ticketmaster core platform, so within other ecosystems. So the benefit of that is that we can marry up the content or the discovery elements with the ticket as well, so that a consumer doesn't have to leave whatever experience they're in order to buy the ticket, right? So they could be experiencing, a live stream or something similar, and then decide, oh, I really want to go see that artist, so I'm going to buy that ticket now. So I think what we want to do is just cut down as much of the friction to buy a ticket wherever you are as much as possible. Because buying a ticket at the end of the day shouldn't be experience. The experience should be everything around it. The ticket should be get it as easy as possible and allow me to manage it as easy as possible.
Yeah, so you facilitate the experience, really.
Absolutely.
Not part of the experience itself. And yes, Tan Man?
I do actually have a thought on this, and I've been thinking about it for a long time. And again, I used to own a few businesses, and I used to design the product. I would manage the creative, so how we put it online, how we sell it at wholesale, and we always got stuck on how we really promote this product online because it is so transactional. Alexandra, you were right. But I don't think there's ever been a solution that anyone has executed well. I over the last couple of years, it got a little more difficult to shop in person, and so nearly all of my shopping, 95% of my shopping, is done online, and it is so transactional. I need this for this event. I'm going to buy this from this website. However, the place that I see as an opportunity for real experience, if you're not going out into a real store, a brick and mortar store, and if shopping is trending to digital, and if we move towards that a much greater percentage, how do we really capture that audience and make them excited about shopping again? Because online shopping really isn't exciting. I've thought about the way one shops through social. So, for example, I will shop through a website if I know there's something specific that I want. But a lot of the time when we're going shopping in real life, we don't really know what we're going for. We're just going out for the experience of shop, see what's out there, and let's have a browse. And that's the beauty of social, through your explore page, through the shop function. I'm talking mostly about Instagram. I don't use Twitter very much. It's hell as far as I'm concerned. And so Instagram is a lot more joyful. And so it's an opportunity to really experience what it is kind of like in real life, or a new version of what it's like to shop. There are great videos, there are great boomerangs, there are great filters, and it feels like something to be excited about when you're shopping the in-feed shop feature. On Instagram, I do not work for Instagram. I'm not endorsed by them in any way. But it's the only time online that I get excited about shopping these days. And it's because they offer something that makes me feel like I understand that person, I can relate to the person I'm buying from. And I hate to say it because I'm not the biggest fan of influencers or influencing, even though I think I technically am now. But I am inspired by them sometimes. I do want to wear the thing that that person is wearing that I feel like I might relate to. And so I think if there's a way of transferring the experience that we get through social, where we feel like we're buying from a friend or we're being encouraged by a friend through the e-tailer, I think that's where we're going to start to see a little more of an experience, as opposed to just going through the transaction and getting the thing that we want. And I'm hoping that if ever I end up doing a business, I've thought a lot about what I would do on a website, and I would want it to feel like the audience is actually buying from me. Whenever somebody used to come into one of our stores, I wanted them to experience what it would be like if I was showing them what I think would work for them. And I don't think we really get that anymore through a website. So let's get them in, let's get the unit per transaction up, let's get them in and out within 5 minutes. We want the payment checkout process to be simple. All of those things are wonderful, but we've taken away the thing that seems to bring people so much joy, which is the experience of shopping. And I think that is that there's so much room for growth in that department. I think even if your product isn't the best product, if you make your website a little more interesting and an experience for somebody to enjoy, people might be more likely to purchase from you. No one's doing anything revolutionary. I'm sure, Christopher, I'm sure the stuff that you're doing is gorgeous, but if it's on a website that just is blah, there's no reason for somebody to come to you, and they can get something maybe of a similar sort or comparable somewhere else that's making it a little more enjoyable.
One thing, if I may, Tam, that might be of interest, with the challenges of sort of the first lockdown, a lot of the work that we were doing previously within Raeburn was kind of workshop based. We had a lot of people actually coming into our studio space to physically make things. And the workshops would be everything from, we make these animal mascots and bucket hats and all of those sorts of things. And one of the things that we actually did pretty successfully, and it was great to hear, Sebastian, you mentioning Depop earlier, we did a really cool partnership during lockdown with Depop, where we launched a range of bucket hats online at Raeburn, but you could buy a kit on Depop, very affordably, £30, $35, $40, or you could just download the kit. You could trace it if you had an iPad or print it at home, and you could make the bucket hat at home for free anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
And so it's really kind of democratizing fashion and sort of really thinking about creativity in a different way. Because I think we've maybe the parallel with the food industry is a sort of fair one here. We've become quite divorced from the act of making. You know, hands-on craft and creativity is quite rare. So actually, one of the things that we're trying to do in terms of experience is bring that back through into digital and physical. Right. Actually, through that opportunity. By all means, you can go online in a boring format and buy a hat, no problem. But isn't it cooler if you can make one at home? From either a kit or.
I think that kind of thinking is the thing that's going to change the e-tail space. I think just thinking that we need to focus on our social because that's where we engage people, but then sending them right over to a generic site that any crappy coder could achieve. I think that's where the problem lies. I think that we need to extend the experience for them over to
I'm 100% in line with what Tan is saying, and the rest of you guys. I think there's a couple of just things. Is that, like, I mean, when I started 15 years ago, and you want to start an e-commerce website, it was like, I need a database. I need like that's kind of the level that people were at. These things are today commodities, but the problem, and to your point, Alexandra, like the shopping experience still kind of looks the same. I go in and it's the freaking catalog online. It's like a list of products. It's not very inspirational, right? But I think but at the same point of time, the thing is, these simplicity and convenience things are crucial. They are crucial. I mean, I'm just thinking about, like, take a very good example. We use Google Hangout internally, and it worked fairly well. Then came COVID, and I'm using Zoom. Why? Because when I invite external guests, they can't freaking use Google Hangout. It's terrible for people that are not using it. And so before, as I was doing a couple of video conferences, that wasn't really a problem. As I'm now using video conferences all the time, I'm on Zoom. So, like, these small differences, subtle differences in just user experience and perfection from a convenience perspective do matter a lot. But to your point, that's just going to become commoditized, all of it. In the end, we're looking at a world where we have curators and we have product and brands. Everything else is just infrastructure. And the retailer's challenge is to find your own in that. Like, what are you? Are you a curator helping people find and discover products? And how are you going to do that in a good way? Or are you a product and a brand, right? I think those are the two things the rest is just infrastructure, to be entirely fair. I think also that as the internet evolves, sooner or later, and this is a little bit like, the self-driving cars that we were talking about 3 years, and I still don't see them in the streets. And I'm still debating with my 7-year-old whether she will get a driver's license or not. But the point is that, like, eventually everything will be buyable, right? So you will watch Netflix and you will see that T-shirt and you will stop it and you will just say, I want to buy it. Like, and you will watch a social media and you will watch whatever you're watching and you will discover you'll be reading this newspaper, whatever. Everything will eventually be buyable. That's like technology will get there. It will catch up. And that will definitely, rewrite our thinking about what shopping is, because as buy buttons will live on every product that we see whenever we see it, that will fundamentally be that's where it's going to end up. Now, I don't know if that's 2 years away or 20 years away. That is a different question, but I'm very, very, very convinced that that's the way we're working. Now, I think also to the other thing, which I think is really interesting and we're seeing a lot of, is I have this vision for a Black Mirror episode. I'm sure some of you have watched Black Mirror.
I'll tell someone at Netflix, we'll see if we can make it happen. Pitch
Yeah,
us.
exactly. Thank you. So my vision of the Black Mirror episode is like, there's this barbecue party going on, right? And this person is coming into the barbecue party and saying like, hey, you know what? Like, hey, John, my best friend, like, have you tried these sausages? And then like the second they raise that sausages, the friend John is like, I want to try them. And he kind of in the air clicks those sausages. And suddenly in the background, somebody's already shipping them to his house. And then at the same point of time, ching, ching, 50 cents is coming into my bank account because I promoted this sausages to my friend, right? Like, that's kind of as well. Like, and people can have a lot of opinions of whether they want to be in that world or not, and so forth. But like the micro-influencing, us kind of promoting and selling and sharing our experiences and actually being paid for doing that by the companies that we promote. Like, I think it is a very likely kind of direction. And then maybe it will be slightly more sophisticated and, there will be a public aspect to this. Do I want to share that I just earned that or not? And am I always earning and so forth? Like, but that's kind of the micro. I think it's really, from a discovery perspective, there are two things. There are celebrities, superstars like Tan that we want to follow and look and so forth. And that will be one. And then there's the social close circle, the micro-influencers, the people that we know, that we have some kind of relationship to. And we see a lot of the kind of up and comings like Fashion Nova and others super, super smart about using micro-influencers, people with 2,000-3,000 followers. But people have a different type of relationship to that person they're following because they feel they're unique. They're part of a smaller group following that individual. And then those are kind of the two things. And when I look at these physical stores, when I look at a Sephora and I have the beauty agents in the Sephora store where people come and need makeup, like, they're kind of acting as that agent, telling me tips that it's just kind of a place where I find that individual that hopefully is giving me good advice. And if it's a really good person, I get a super experience. And if it is a person that's less passionate, I'm not as excited when I've been there, right? So like, I think those are the things. But I totally agree with you. Like, this is not going to stop. And the convenience part of internet is kind of moving to its point. Like, it's there now, almost. Like, it's almost as simple to buy everywhere. It's almost the same shipping. It's almost the same payments. Like, it's getting there. It's very close.
Sebastian, just to add on to your point, the micro-influencing, it's what we were talking about earlier, that yes, that works on social so well, and it's clearly working. People are using, there are so many influencers out there who are getting paid a commission to do exactly what you're talking about. However, that doesn't seem to have transferred over to the e-com world. And I think that's where the missing piece is. I think that if it's working so well through the likes of Instagram, why aren't businesses transferring that over to their websites to have, let's say, for example, every product, yes, but some people do want that very simple transaction. The stale, yes, I want that. I'm looking for a white t-shirt. There's the white t-shirt. Buy the white t-shirt. I need an extra large. Get 3 of them, and I'll be back in 3 months to buy some more. But to also offer a function where you feel like you're buying from somebody who you understand, who understands you, and it's a much more emotional experience, like the one in real life. If I go shopping, in real life, I usually go with a friend, somebody I care about, somebody I trust, and I will ask them when I come out of the fitting room, even though it's my job in real life, I will still ask my husband, who doesn't work in my industry, do you like this on me? What do you think of this? And I think getting that experience in real, in an e-com world is, I think, wildly important if we want to bring back the experience of shopping.
Fully agree. And that's why we can sometimes laugh about it a little bit, because it's all becoming multi-level marketing in the end. And like, multi-level marketing has this bad reputation because a lot of it was pyramid schemes, and it had a different target and actually selling the product and so forth. But in a way, that is definitely one direction that is going to continue growing. And I'm sure it's going to be more sophisticated because people don't want to think about somebody getting cash for, promotions. Like all of these things that we currently criticize it for is going to change and evolve over time to make it more sophisticated. But I do think it's, directionally speaking, that is going to be major.
I do want to make one real quick point about that. A lot of my friends are influencers, and that's the way I grew my business. I would not have had businesses if it wasn't for bloggers, influencers who helped me really build my brand. A lot of people have a real issue with the fact that they make money from it. We're not paying that money. Well, you are probably, Klarna, but regular folk aren't paying that. We're not paying our friend that extra 10%. So it shouldn't matter that somebody's getting paid for that. They're doing the job of an advert or a campaign or a marketer. They're telling you, this is a new hot thing. This is what I'm wearing. You should buy it too. We're not paying for it. The company is paying for it. There shouldn't be as much negativity towards them as there is.
I'm interested in where you guys have all personally got your influence from in a sort of recent things you've bought. For instance, I'm not influenced by influencers at all. I love Instagram, but the one time I bought something because I saw it on an influencer on Instagram was absolute catastrophe. And, not even in kind of fashion, but like in stereo or whatever. I mean, I still get a lot of my information from the written word or pictures. So whether it's online newspapers or magazines, or I'm probably the only person that still buys millions of magazines and newspapers, but they certainly will make me buy, seeing the image there and having it kind of lying around in the house and kind of looking at it again and again and thinking, oh, well, maybe I will get that lamp or look for it. I mean, that's me. And I know that many people don't work that way, but I'm kind of intrigued to know, Peter, what would make you buy something? Where do you get your information from?
It's interesting. It goes back to the case of what I certainly split between discovery of the primary product and what the challenges of the e-commerce business is to then advance that purchase or upsell you with something else that you may not have known in that particular time that you wanted. And I think from our business, you can discover. We do an awful lot of discovery ourselves based on all of the historic information that we have collected about fans, historical events that they've gone to. So if you've gone to, Adele before, we know you've a good chance that you want to go see her again. And I think it's about, so actually the primary discovery of X person likes Coldplay is the easy matchup. I think then getting that person along and through the transactional path to understand, okay, so what are you? Are you a person that's going to go with a bunch of mates? Are you that person that's potentially going to be, would prefer a VIP experience? Do you want that, a front row ticket? Do you want the kind of meet and greet? Do you want, a pre or post game experience of some type? And it's that level of data and trying to, you can't offer a customer all of those options, so you have to use data science and what about that person, and anything beyond that you're using to layer in on top of that insight to be able to say, right, this person has a very good propensity to want parking at the event and to want to get an offer on maybe $10 off refreshments. And it's about understanding the different touch points throughout 6 months before the show happens. They bought their ticket. the event happens 6 months later, all these different touch points in between and at the event and post-event that we can communicate to the fans. So there's tons of different areas and ways that we can talk to that fan, and they can discover different elements that they might want added into their experience. But that's generally how we do it, and how we're evolving as a business, the importance of data science and the importance of those different touch points in the event going life cycle.
Sorry, I'm so sorry. I'm going to have to interrupt. Peter, I want to know who's influencing you online. Who's convincing you to shop?
I mean, just generally.
Yes, you personally.
I'm not sophisticated from an influencer perspective, but from fashion stuff, I follow brands, to be honest with you. But I do agree with you that Instagrams of the world are so much better than that, than a Twitter of the world, or even the brands themselves. So from a discovery standpoint, it's platform specific, and it's people like you, what you do, man.
But if I may, there's also just a conversation, I think, around, is it an emotional or a rational decision that you're about to make? And I think that's true in physical retail or online, right? But when I think about people coming into our retail stores, it's quite incredible how that sort of breakdown can be realized, where someone's very rationally saying, I need a coat because it's raining, my budget's X, and then you can show them the coats that go in that price range. But then also the emotional, for someone, for example, to see one of our 1950s silk map dresses, they didn't know that morning that they were going out to buy a silk map dress, but they see it, they fall in love with it, and then that's it. And it's an amazing kind of alchemy that's very, very difficult to define. And the truth is that even online or indeed in physical, I wouldn't say that we can define that. We certainly don't know what every day is going to look like, because you just can't judge that as well, which kind of makes it fun too, I think.
Sebastian, what do you feel?
I am perplexed. Like, I think it actually varies a little bit, but it was kind of fun to give you an example. I have young kids, right? So they're 3, 5, and 7, and I'm reading a lot of books to them. So I was kind of trying to just find what are cool books that I could read to them that are like interesting, fun. Like I managed to find this book that's the book that doesn't want to be read, and that they love. It's a little bit like the classical, there's a monster in the end of this book, which is another classic on the, and it's actually, so I Googled it, and it was actually, for that point, I was actually kind of trying to explore where would I be the best, and it's interesting that like the problem you get with Amazon and the big retailers is that like they become so big and they serve so many, that actually kind of serving those kind of use cases where it's just I want to find somebody who's curated this, who's kind of has a passion for this, who's read 2,000 of those children books and tried them on their kids and concluded that like these are the ones that really, I don't know, like a kindergarten teacher or somebody who's like passionately like, but the problem is the internet is so big, right? It's like that, you come back to that, like, where do I find that person? Where is that passionate person who has a passion for that specific thing? And it's interesting because it's an unresolved issue still. Like it's I Googled, I got the top 10 books, they were kind of nice, but who was the one? Was it Google giving that recommendation? Unclear. Like, is it Google with their AI who was giving me that? That doesn't feel that personal. Like, I'm not convinced. It's a little, and I think that,
Sebastian, that reviews play though. Like, and that's one of the
but reviews, I think, I don't know what your experience is, but it's a little bit like with ticket. Like, I think that's one of the issues with what's it called, the classical hotels review site, TripAdvisor, right? So I think TripAdvisor, when it came, felt very relevant, right? I initially looked at it every time we were booking a hotel. I was looking at it. What happened then is it became so massive that now I'm like, yeah, but the problem is most people writing those reviews are not me. They have a different budget. They have a different type of expectations. So what they're rating in this way isn't entirely what I kind of rate. I have a slightly different taste. TripAdvisor doesn't really allow me to kind of adjust much for my own personality and so forth. And then also I'm getting a little bit frustrated seeing these people going in on my hotels that I love, hotels that I've lived at and that I know are really good. And then I see people going trash talking them in order to get free nights at the hotel and whatever. And I see this like, you know, somebody say, oh, I'm super disappointed with this one. And then like the hotel stuff, like, you know, we did all of these things to kind of satisfy you. And people are trying to use it as some kind of, you know, so I'm kind of losing trust for it as well. I'm like, can I still trust these reviews? Are they still relevant? Like, how much is just traffic that somebody generates to push up their reviews? And so the problem is like when these things come and they're fresh and they're new, then they're like trustable. But then like over time they become important, and then people start gaming the systems, and you start seeing that and you're like, oh, I don't know. So I think it's like, that's the cycle of things, right? That's the interesting thing, that like initially it's good, and then you start looking at it and then you're like, you want more. You wanted more personalized. You wanted more real, more, you know, human. You wanted like, it's nice when it came, but it loses some of the. I'm not saying it's still valuable. I'm not saying it's unvaluable. I mean, reviews is a good thing, but it just changes.
But personalization is quite interesting, don't you think? Because it's like if you like this, then you'll like this. And then I was on, I think it was iTunes or something, and I bought one cover version of a Burt Bacharach song, and suddenly I had like endless things that were Burt Bacharach songs. I didn't want more Burt Bacharach. I bought one, what I thought was quite a kind of recherche version. Suddenly I've got Sasha Distel singing "Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head" as a recommendation. I mean, it's just like, it's kind of,
it's just not good enough. That's the
problem. It's just not quite good enough yet.
No, and I think the same goes with retargeting. Like, you look at one product just out of interest, you know, you're not that interested. And then you're getting chased by this product all over the internet, and you're seeing it over there, like, please go away, go away. And even if you bought it, you still see it, and like, you just go away.
Yeah, that's so annoying. You've just bought one, and then suddenly they've got another puffer down code every time I switch on my email coming.
So I think, again, like, I understand why these things work. I'm not saying they're not efficient. Retargeting is one of the efficient marketing tools that people can apply, right? But the problem is that our expectations consistently grow, right? Like, we got from dial-up to broadband and so forth, and consistently as all these technology evolves, our expectations just increases, right? And that's what's giving opportunity for new people to come in and use technology in a smarter way, and use these things and innovate and be creative and disrupt again, right? Which is kind of the fun part of this industry.
So we're running out of time, and we've got a few questions that have been come in from the audience. So I'm just going to whack some of them at you. Well, on a kind of nice note, what positive learnings have each of you taken from the last few months? I mean, I know that, Christopher, you talked about some of the developments that you've done in your store. Is there a kind of overview idea that's made you think this could be?
I think absolutely, as I touched on earlier, the acceleration for us around digital, but particularly around the fact that we've been able to do our workshop program that before was limited, let's say, to 8 or 10 people, to then be able to open that up to the world for free or for charity. That's something I'm really very proud of.
Sebastian?
Yeah, I mean, I think I mentioned most of them, but I think it is my probably most positive thing was that I was flying 50% of my time, and now I've been home with my kids for 9 months. That's been quite nice, to be honest. I think most of the others I probably mentioned by now.
Yeah. Tan?
For me, the greatest learning as far as my spending habits go is that I'm a lot more aware of the kind of things I'm buying, and the kind of things that are completely unnecessary, and the things I encourage people to buy. Again, I use my social as a real millennial, and I share the things that I'm using. I tell people about the things that I love, and those things have changed so much. It's the things that make me feel joy and pleasure. I don't invest in something unless it actually makes me feel a certain kind of way, because there's so much tension out there right now. So I use my platform differently than I ever did before, and I use my spending very differently, where I'm a lot more aware of what I'm buying, and I don't get sucked into the trends like I used to.
Peter, any?
Yeah, I would just say from an organizational standpoint, it's been an incredible experience. Just purely from we're a big organization, 32 countries, and we have you know, it's hard to sometimes move that size of organization in the way that a startup would and as fast as a startup would. But because of the things that hit us from COVID, we were kind of forced to operate like a startup in ways. As I talked about before, having to pivot on all of our strategy. And I think that on the far end is just going to make us much more dynamic of an organization and as a workforce as well.
A difficult one here, but how do you think you make yourself stand out amongst your competitors? What are your kind of key secrets for that? Sebastian, how about you?
Well, I think that I think for us it's been I mean, right now there's a lot of like writing and talking about this buy now, pay later trend and how that's different and so forth. But I really always seen that as a feature. I think that the way we think about Klarna is that in the end, there will be all these buttons in the checkout, the Klarna button, the Amex button, the Visa button, the PayPal button, whatever. And obviously, first and foremost, we got to answer, why would anyone click our button over any other button? Like, and buy now, pay later has been one reason. But what we're trying to make sure is that also in the post-purchase experience, the fact that you can, I mean, think about your Amex credit card statement. What can you see? Nothing. Merchant name, text, black and white. When you open your purchase history with Klarna, you see images of the items that you bought. You can initiate a return. You can contact customer service. You can track your logistics. You can find out when your package arrived. You can contact customer service. Like, it's a much richer experience, and also, you know, trying to somehow facilitate that a relationship between the brand and the merchant and the consumer, because that's what's interesting about payments. It's really, we are that transaction that happens. We can be that somehow facilitator of a relationship. We are not the relationship, we are the facilitator of that relationship. So I think the fact that we have SKU level data and line item details on every transaction allows us to create a much richer experience, and nobody else in the payment space has that. So I think that is the key competitive advantage in the end that allows us to build much richer experiences for both the consumer and then for the merchants as well. So I think that's how we're trying to differentiate.
And Christopher, I mean, as a sort of fashion designer, you are, as it were, unique, because every designer does their own thing. But how do you, I mean, in a field that more people are moving into, and particularly with your work with Timberland, what do you see as your kind of, what would you like your differentiating point to be?
Well, ultimately, with Timberland, we're really proud. We've launched our bold goals towards 2030 to actually be net positive on the planet through circularity and regenerative agriculture. And I think that the uniqueness with Timberland specifically is all of that culture, you know, going back to 73, and then layered onto all of that good work that was done around sustainability coming all the way through the history, but then actually to be truly moving towards being much more positive on planet and people. I think that's really exciting. So it's all about how you can build on that momentum.
And Tan, I mean, how do you make yourself stand out?
You know, I actually do have an opinion on this. I think that the way I treat myself as a brand at this point also, because that is just the way our world, my world is. And the way we stand out is by being very much authentic and offering a perspective that hasn't often been seen before. Netflix often will tell me that I speak too freely, but I think it's what's garnered me the success that I've had, that people actually do trust in the things that I talk about, the things that I'm promoting on my Instagram, the life that I show them on Instagram. They feel like they can relate to me because I'm not like many others in our industry who are very PR savvy. I have no desire to be super PR savvy. I want people to know that what I say, I truly mean, and they can trust in me. And I think that brands could learn a lot from that also, by not just thinking about what is a good PR line for sustainability or diversity, but to actually see it through.
Yes, I think that's a very good point to draw a close on. The idea of trust and truth in brands and in retail and in life in general, I guess. So thank you very much, everyone. It's been great hearing your views.
Thank you so much, Alexandra. That was wonderful. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
you.